Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do. So if you like edgier kind of content, definitely hit that subscribe button. If you need dice and or dice accessories, anything for your ttrpg needs, check out Dice Legion and use the promo code SINISTER to get 10% off all of your purchases. Definitely trying to help you out. They have a lot of great products. Definitely check them out. This week's video, we're going to be very different. We are going to check out the OGL. Full disclosure, I did not want to do this video, mainly because the leak from the OGL is just a leak. It is not a finalized copy. It is just something that they saw and then released to everyone else. A lot like Unearthed Arcana, this is something that's a draft kind of, or may not be the full truth of what is actually going to be released when the OGL comes out. That is very important to know right off the bat. It's not finalized yet, so definitely want to take that into consideration when we look at all the information and some of the other people that are covering content. Another thing I want to get off my chest right before it starts, I don't want this channel to be a channel that jumps at any opportunity to create hysteria and draw in views and subscribers because of that. Sorry, I just don't want to be that way. I'd rather just develop content about things that I love because I truly love this game and try and work in that kind of a field. A lot of the videos about the OGL are generating hysteria because it's creating a lot of clicks and a lot of likes and a lot of views, and people are just going crazy watching it and getting so wrapped up in emotions, and I think that's unjust and uncalled for, and we're going to get a little bit into that. So if you came here looking for me to bash it, definitely not going to happen. Trying to shed some light and try and really make something that really tries to get people in the right line of thinking. So first and foremost, the OGL is the Open Gaming License. It governs anybody that makes any kind of material in pertaining to Dungeons and Dragons. So WotC is working on trying to refigure the format, as the format is really outdated. That's just a normal thing. First and foremost, what does that mean for people that are doing like what I do or other YouTube videos and channels that do kind of the same thing and cover Dungeons and Dragons? It means nothing. Really, because we're mainly just, and I hate to pull the veil back, but we're just really doing free advertisement for them. We're talking about things that we love about the game. We're showing you great, cool things you can do in the game. And it's really encouraging for people who want to play the game or are interested to play the game to see videos like this and try and pull them towards playing it. That's kind of what we're doing, whether we're doing it on purpose or not. It's just part of what we're doing. If you're streaming a game of D&D, even if it's homebrewed, you're not creating something that isn't already within the rule set, that isn't already based on the Dungeons and Dragons world. Like, you're not. Like, realistically, that's not what you're doing. You're showing the world a game you can play within Dungeons and Dragons, which boils down to free advertising. Are you making money off it? If you end up being that big of a channel or something like Critical Role, then yeah, you're definitely making money off it. You're building careers that can support multiple people. If you get to a point where you can do things like Critical Role, where you can make TV shows and things like that, yeah, you need to pay royalties. That's just part of it. You're using their system. You're using their entire TTRPG system that they built from the ground up over years and years and years and decades of work. That's just fair. The percentage-wise is really probably going to be worked out a little bit better to make some sort of sense, so that way creators can continue to keep creating, and it'll probably end up developing into something else, and I have ideas about that I'll cover later. I'm pretty sure I got a lot of people mad so far, so let's take some time and break down some of the things that I said. Now, I mentioned that if you're a big channel, this is probably going to be something that might be a problem. And why I say that is a lot of the bigger channels that have huge amounts of subscribers that I follow and watch very closely produce third-party content. Whether you're RuneSmith and you produce Scribble's Codex, whether you're the Dungeon Dudes and you put in the Drakkenheim book, or you're Mr. Rex, who just put out a book that started in Kickstarter that's still in the process of developing but just got fully funded, whether you're anyone else that comes up with stuff, Kobold Press, anything like that. Even Critical Role. And Critical Role is one of the best versions of this. They put out Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, which is a book that is in the D&D world. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely a lot of things behind that are intricate, and there are definitely royalties being played. But if you take the Tel'Dorai book that they produce after that and remove the theory behind Explorer's Guide to Wildemount being official D&D content, if that existed and that was the only book they put out, imagine how much that sold, and it was based off of the system that you built and you are making no money off. I don't want to side with the evil bloodthirsty corporation, but a fact is a fact. If you take that consideration, then you're losing as a company. And as a company, if they do not survive, we will lose the whole thing. It's just kind of the way it works. If they find that other people are producing more content than we're producing as a company, then why are they making it? They'll shut the whole thing down, and then other people would have to create their own things in order to try and survive and live as long and have that longevity. It's a vicious, cruel cycle. When you're making content based on another system, it's really a circumstance where you should be aware that this is something that you're going to have to face. Don't get me wrong, I respect the game. It was a long run where people were able to make whatever they want, and whatever they want was great and awesome. A lot of great things came out of it, but that time is running out. It's a fact. But you were making money off of something that you didn't have any royalties or rights to. That's the problem. That's really what the main legal issue is. If it was happening to you, you'd be up in arms. And I'm sorry about that, but that's just the horrible truth of the circumstance. They do have a leg to stand on in regards to creating this in order to do that. It's unfortunate. Don't get me wrong. I do believe they will work something out so it becomes a better system than what was leaked. But again, it was leaked. And I think a lot of the times when things are leaked, sometimes it's to gain free publicity or gain an understanding of how the community works. Before I go any further, I want to talk about what I mentioned when I said that I think when things are leaked, it's kind of like a litmus test. And what I mean is, and this is kind of like a perfect example, is look at the leak that happened for the Deadpool movie. It came out and people were so excited about it. They wanted it. It started blowing up on the internet, and then they ended up finishing the movie. Sometimes I think leaks done in this kind of a fashion are beneficial as a way to learn whether or not it's worth it. A studio going, look, I don't think this is really going to be worth it, and then they release just that little trailer, and people go nuts over it, then, all right, we have a hit on our hands, let's finish the whole thing. That's a great way to gain a free understanding of how the community and how the people you cater to react to something. This leak, I think, is very similar in that fashion. It's a great way to let a little bit of information slip that has some part of what's going on and see how everyone reacts. It's a great way to go, all right, this is clearly going to hurt us. Let's change this up and make this more reasonable. Or let's not be monsters and try and be more reasonable. Or let's see, nobody's mad. Maybe we can push this a little further. Life is kind of that game where you kind of just try and see how far you can get before you get caught. And it's just unfortunate sometimes that's just the way it works. And I thought that was really important to mention because I do believe this is what that leak was. This leak was designed to get people in outrage and to see what people thought and what people do. Because it's important when you're a company to use your own self as a scapegoat and then prove how much you care about your fans by readjusting things. Do I think things are going to be changed dramatically? No. I think the percentages are going to be more reasonable. And the reason why I do this is because, like I said before, all the channels that cover D&D do a lot of basically free advertising for D&D. If you take that away, then you're losing out on the best availability for people to talk about your product and get your product out. I mean, look at how many people's lives are now dedicated to making just D&D content. Like, it's awesome, it's incredible. I would love to get to that level, but that's a big part of what makes this game great. Like, how often do you see a D&D commercial that's not related to the movie or the game? When was the last time you saw a 5th edition commercial? it all kind of goes hand in hand. It's just kind of a funky way the world has worked. It has evolved with the use of technology. I'm sorry, it's just kind of not on topic, but that's why I think a lot of the times when you do reach a huge amount of level where you're making like over multiple $100,000, yeah, you should be paying royalties because you wouldn't exist without this company. And it's not like you could even fake it or pretend that this product isn't why you're doing what you're doing. It's just it's a horrible truth that we're all slowly trying to face. So who does this actually hurt? If you're one of the big guys on top, it's probably going to hurt you a little bit. If you're producing your own campaigns, your own books, and things like that, yeah, that's going to hurt you. And the reason is because you're really building out entire stories based on their systems. Some of them based on their worlds, but absolutely based on the bones and structure that they built the game upon. And there's no if, and, or buts about it. The real issue is with the actual ownership of it. And that's where people are definitely going to have more of an issue because it's intellectual property and it's kind of all over the place. One of the examples of what I mean by this is if any of you guys play MOBAs or League of Legends, Dota 2, Heroes of New Earth, anything along any of those lines, maybe you know this, probably you don't. You have to be kind of a dinosaur like me. Dota started out as a Warcraft 3 map from the original Warcraft 3 game. Blizzard had the foresight to make that announcement in the terms and condition. Whenever you make a custom map, it is owned by Blizzard. How they were able to do that and have the foresight, I wish I knew. Because of that, Dota was owned by Blizzard when it came out and when it was originally created and when it blew up and became one of the biggest games being played. That's what happened. So after a certain contract had expired, that's when you got that explosion of MOBAs. You got League of Legends, you got Heroes of New Earth, you had Dota 2 beginning to do their own development. And how that happened was the original creators of Dota each split off and made their own games. And that's how that ended up creating that entire history. But in the beginning, it was all owned by Blizzard. By accident, because they owned every map that was a custom map. Where those guys are financially or what happened, I can't really tell you. But because of their ownership of that and how things split off, you ended up developing almost an entire new gaming industry. And it's just one of those ways that the world just evolved after it and created beyond the restrictions and how differently the world changed. So that was something that was very, very unique, and that's a good idea as to what can happen, or at least one idea as to what can happen when people own intellectual property like this. Maybe it'll bring out a bigger explosion into other kinds of TTRPGs where people are creating different ones in new worlds where they're changing things and evolving, because that's kind of where Pathfinder came from. And more TTRPGs is a great theory because maybe the whole industry will get bigger and it'll grow and it'll be something that the whole world gets to see and enjoy. But losing your intellectual property sucks. It does, and that's a fact. But it's not the end. And if you're really that gung-ho about tabletop RPGs and you love D&D and you still want to create D&D content, but you want to do your own, maybe that's what you do. Maybe it's time for you to take that final push and start, taking a chance on yourself and making it. I can't tell you what that is, and I'm sorry if it's going to end up crushing you, but in truth, you should be getting something from it because you're the one who's putting in the work, and I think legally you do have a leg to stand on, and I think that's what's going to change in the final release, that it gives content creators still a little bit of their own ownership and only have that royalties be a smaller percentage than what it previously was, because to cut it out completely is a very bad move. Full disclosure, I don't want to be one of those channels that's chasing down subscribers and chasing down viewership and trying to get everybody whipped up into a frenzy without any real reason to. This is a leak. This isn't definite. This isn't cut in stone. Is it going to be that bad that everyone's got to drop ship and just jump to something else? Maybe that's what we got to do. But at this point, what are we facing? What are we fighting? It's a leak. It's not set in stone. Maybe they're smart enough to look at the reactions and then just go from there and do the smart thing. Give us a chance to still create and still grow the game and be smart and grow with the community as opposed to growing without it. So one last thing I really want to say about the OGL is, on one side, I get it. If I created something and people were making money off of it, I'd be furious. I'd be really cold-hearted and aggressive about taking all of it from them. It is a business. They make a game. It's a game that's loved by so many people and are enjoyed, and the availability of the rule set gives you this great sensation to build and create your own things. But credit where credit's due. If you can justify doing it without D&D, then do it without D&D. This is one of those things where you got to really face who you are if you're a high-level content creator, and you're making like legitimately a good life from this. Is it scary for you? Probably. I can't possibly tell you that it's not, or that it's not something you should be worried about, because maybe you should be. Because realistically, how are you going to adjust to a different change in style when you're responsible for paying a tax? This is going to take some time to weed out. Even when it first drops, it's going to be a lot of reading and checking things out and verifying that what you're doing is okay or what you're doing isn't. And maybe it's going to affect greater people than it isn't. Right now, I don't think it's going to affect a lot of people that do videos like me and myself and some of the other content creators that just do videos about D&D. But it might. It might change a lot of things as to what's going on, and that's something we have to face and have to move forward. But I'm not going to make you get crazy over it. I'm not going to add fuel to the fire. Let's be a little bit more composed here and really kind of prepare ourselves for a worst case scenario, or for things to be not as bad as we see. It's a leak. It can change. It can advance. If they're a smart business, they should take the information that they're seeing, the outrage, the blatant changes, and see if they can implement something that makes more sense. Fact is, if you're making money off of D&D, you owe D&D. It's just the truth, and it's the right way to do things. In all fairness, the fact that they're giving you X amount of money that you have to meet annually in order to be able to be eligible for that is pretty good, meaning that a lot of us probably will not make it that way unless we are super successful in this field. So if you're one of those people that are super successful, first and foremost, I would do anything to be you. Secondly, don't create this dangerous emotional cycle. Try and keep your composure and face what's going ahead. Prepare yourself, and maybe you take that chance. Maybe you risk it. Maybe you bet on yourself. There's a reason why people love your content and love the stuff that you do, and love your opinions and love hearing what you say and loving your analysis of things and how great your concepts are, and watch your live streams so they can see you playing the game and just fall in love with the characters and stories you create. It's you. You have the love and support. If you're really scared about losing out because you're going to not be able to make books anymore, or any kind of big content like that that's actually tied in directly, take the chance. I think you'll find you have a lot more love and support than you realize. That being said, we're going to bring this video to a close. I really, again, didn't want to make this video, but I felt like I had to say something, and I didn't want to add on to the hysteria, and at least give somebody an option to just hear somebody not trying to make things worse. I'm trying to make things a little bit calmer so we can better situate things. So please, if you're able, support us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Check out Dice Legion. They're awesome. Definitely look at some of their stuff. If you need dice, use the code SINISTER and get some money off. And thank you for giving a Spooky Kid a chance.